All right, we can see your PowerPoint presentation, Dan.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you for having me. We have had a busy year. I guess I'll just start with kind of a high-level overview of community development and specifically planning and development services. This is one of the sections within community development. And I'll share some of the activity that we've had over the last really year and a half. And so community development includes the planning and development services section, as well as the housing section, and then real estate. One of the changes that happened as of January 1 of this year is engineering used to be part of community development as well. Engineering has now been elevated to its own division. And so Rick Barrett, our city engineer, is now a division head. He reports to the city manager. And so community development got a little smaller this year. We've got about 60 employees now, as opposed to about 91. But we've had a really busy year. And I think all of you in real estate professionals understand what's happening with growth and development. We never slowed down. In fact, we had a busier year in 2020 than we did in 19. Total permits were up. The valuation was up by, I think, almost 70 million. We had about $263 million worth of construction in 2020 compared to, I think it was at 160 million the previous year. And we're seeing the same trend this year. So year to date, January through June, again, we're up on total permits, we're up on valuation, and we're really seeing the activity across all types of development. So residential, commercial, institutional. Within our planning and development services section, not only does it include the building department, but it also includes planning, code compliance, and comprehensive planning, long-range planning. And so I'm going to go through kind of each program with some of the highlights of things they've been working on. If you have any questions, I don't see anyone, so just speak up and I can pause at any time and provide more information, or we can wait until the end. And so hopefully you're seeing...
Just as a reminder, sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to remind our members that questions, please do not use the chat box, use the Q&A. Put your questions there and I'll be monitoring that as we proceed. And I'll be filtering those, and I'm a pretty curious person as well, so I might interject Dan with some of my own questions as well. And then we'll integrate some of those questions and make sure that we answer all of your questions as we go through. So feel free to, as we continue the presentation, to put your questions in the box and we'll take time to answer those.
Sounds good. So hopefully you're seeing the building safety slide. Some of the things we're working on. So this is our building department. Amy Palmer is our building official. Some of the things we've been working on with engineering, a residential grading ordinance, and this is something that would work hand in hand with a single family permit. What we're finding time and again is new construction is really having impacts on neighbors, even in single family neighborhoods. And so we're going to start asking for some additional grading information at the time of your single family permit, just to make sure you're not directing all your stormwater onto your neighbor, and then we have to deal with it later. Similar issue with driveway slopes. You know, based on slope in Flagstaff, we can get some pretty steep driveways. We are working with sustainability on the carbon neutrality plan. That's a separate plan that really sustainability is championing, but there are impacts to the building codes. And so one of the things when we adopted our new building code 2 years ago, we did ask, and it does now include that new homes will be basically EV ready, so electrical vehicle charging ready, which is we believe it's a small financial impact on the cost of a home. We know that everything adds up and impacts the cost of a home, but that's something council supported. We've also been working on incentives for affordable housing, and I'm going to get into a little more detail later, but our building department has been part of that team. Some of the ideas that have come up are going to be expedited plan review for affordable units, as well as having some model plan sets. So rather than somebody having to go out and design a home or buy plans, we would have model plan sets that would be available to anybody for no cost. And then again, your permit would essentially be pre-approved. So theoretically, you could come in, just pay for the building permit and build your unit. So those are some things that we're working on in housing. Code compliance is a program within our building safety program. We're working on a property maintenance ordinance. I'm actually going to be heading this effort. The last time a property maintenance ordinance was in front of City Council, I believe, was 2012. We've had a number of neighborhoods ask for this over the years. Sunnyside, La Plaza Vieja, Southside. There's a coalition of neighborhoods, the League of Neighborhoods, and they've really been a proponent of having a property maintenance ordinance. And so this would focus more on really what is the condition of the building. Is there peeling paint? Is there a failing roof? It also deals with things in your yard, stronger language on the accumulation of garbage and debris, a little stronger than what we have today. And so I'm going to be meeting with those neighborhoods again. And then I think we'll be presenting something to the council probably in the fall of this year. Last time there was a lot of community pushback actually. And after council had given direction to work on a PMO, by the time it got in front of that body, I think some council members had changed. And back in 2012, it was decided not to proceed with a property maintenance ordinance. So we'll see what happens this time around. We do have some new short-term rental software that the city purchased. This is really about licensing. And so folks doing short-term rentals are being asked to obtain a business license. Our code team is involved in that. Outdoor lighting, we're really sunsetting LPS, low pressure sodium bulbs, not only within our street lights, but also our commercial lighting standards. Low pressure sodium has really been the standard for dark skies, but with that technology is going away. With the preference for LED, there's no market anymore for low pressure sodium. And so those manufacturers aren't even making the bulbs anymore. And so we've really landed on what's called a narrow spectrum amber LED, NSA LED. And so a narrow spectrum amber LED filters out the blue light, which is the light that's really harmful to dark skies. And so we're making that conversion. We've adopted new standards for street lights. We're working on amendments to our lighting standards right now for commercial and industrial properties that get these lighting permits, and multifamily residential. Our Graffiti Busters program is very busy. The last year and a half, there's been, some view it as an uptick in graffiti. It's kind of a nonstop activity. And so if you or a group want to volunteer in the community, Reggie Eccleston, our code compliance manager, will set you up with Graffiti Busters. We love working with local groups who want to go do a volunteer day, even a couple hours. You can really help us out a lot. We use paint from our recycling center, so we provide all the materials if you want to go do some graffiti busting work. And then customer service, we really try to help out some of the property owners who aren't able to remove snow from the sidewalk or maybe have other encroachments. And so Reggie works again with groups who want to go out and help some of our elderly residents who need help with removal of things, clearing sidewalks. So again, if you know of a resident who needs some help, we'll try to provide that. If you want to volunteer, we can do that as well. Moving into comprehensive planning, another program within planning and development services. Obviously, the census was completed last year. Sarah Dechter, our comprehensive planning manager, is our census coordinator. And so the process is beginning to review the census numbers and see if we want to file any kind of a challenge on what the result was. We are busy implementing neighborhood plans. So in the last 5 years, we've adopted a Southside neighborhood plan, La Plaza Vieja neighborhood plan. We did a specific plan for high occupancy housing, which is our densities higher than high density. So our high density district allows 29 units an acre. The high occupancy housing, or HOH, would be densities greater than 29 units and bedroom counts greater than 75 beds per acre. Next neighborhood plans, we're really looking at either Pine Knoll, Brannan, or Sunnyside. And so we haven't identified yet which neighborhood plan will be next, but they're in line. And so Sarah's working with those neighborhoods, and then ultimately it'll be a council decision. We're working on the John Wesley Powell specific plan and infrastructure. So this is really the extension of John Wesley Powell from where it dead ends at Pine Canyon to the east and north to 4th Street. And so we've got 30% design at this point, I believe. Peak Engineering is the consultant on that. Julie Lead, you may know her. She's kind of the project manager for Peak Engineering. And so she's been working with our engineering program on those designs of that new roadway and all the utilities that would go in there. They've been meeting with the property owners. At some point, that'll be shifted over to comprehensive planning. We'll take it through a process for adoption as a specific plan. And then that paves the way for completing design. There's a funding component required to build this project. Some of it is funded through 420 or 419, which is the dedicated transportation tax, the 20-year tax. I believe that funds it at about 40%, but we still anticipate about a 60% contribution, either from property owners that would benefit from it through some type of improvement district or some additional public funding. Again, working on the carbon neutrality plan. This is a major plan amendment that Sarah's taking through with our sustainability program. The active transportation plan has got a lot of discussion recently with the direction from council. We need to advance bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Really, the playbook for that is our active transportation plan. Martin Ince, our multimodal planner, has been working on this for a number of years. We're ready to get it adopted. It's going to go through the process to be adopted as a specific plan. And what that identifies is our bike ped projects really for the next 20 years, prioritizes them and identifies missing segments, missing sidewalk segments, missing bike lane segments, and where we should be doing these separated bike lanes, which is really what we're going to roll out at the end of this summer. You may have read about it. Council's given direction to try this on, I believe, Beaver and segments of Butler. And then we're starting the renewal of our 10-year plan, our regional plan. It was adopted in 2013, ratified by the voters in 2014. And so the state requires us to revisit the regional plan every 10 years. And so we're kicking that off this year, and it's going to be a multi-year process with looking for a plan update in 2024-25. Heritage preservation is a big component now of our comprehensive planning program. We hired a new planner in the last year, Mark Rivas. He's called a neighborhood heritage preservation planner. They've been working on the inventory of the South Side, potentially creating a national register. Basically, there already is a national register district in the South Side, but there's not a local district. And so we've been working on that, working with the commission on potential zoning code updates, a focus on Route 66 properties, and an outreach on historic Black churches. A lot of these are in the South Side, so there's some overlap with the South Side work. Really raising awareness about what opportunities are for property owners within Flagstaff who have historic properties. What are some of the federal opportunities to get tax credits for you to invest in those properties and preserve them? And then really improving customer service has been a big emphasis, having Mark on staff. Moving over to our zoning code, again, a very busy program. Dan Seimer is our zoning code manager. We presented this to council in January of this year, kind of putting amendments into these different tiers. We've almost completed all of tier 1. So I'll go through some of these with some more detail. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but obviously recreational marijuana, we had to make some amendments on that. Working on incentives and implementing the South Side plan, the HOH plan. Tier 2, we're looking to get some consultant help. And so we actually have put out a RSOQ for zoning code consultants. We'll be reviewing those proposals here shortly. And hopefully a consultant is going to help us with looking at the transect and kind of recalibrating the transect to match really what the South Side plan is calling for. We also had a petition a number of years ago for resource protection and wildlife protection. That's H on there. We're gonna take that up. That's gonna be looking at seeps and springs, rock outcroppings, and then potentially prairie dogs. Some of the amendments that have been completed. This was a big one that came up really out of a necessity for a low-income housing tax credit project in Flagstaff. What we find is, we ask a lot in our development standards. And so if somebody's providing affordable housing, this question has come up, what relief would be appropriate from our standards if they're providing development affordable housing. And so we did an ordinance here earlier this year that if a project is really 100% affordable, meaning 80% of the AMI, then council and staff can consider waiving development standards 15% or greater than the standard. So this could be, it's a whole range of development standards. A project that got a LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit, is going to be using this. This is going to be the Foundation for Senior Living project between Aspen and Beaver, where the old grade school is, just a few blocks north of City Hall. And so we believe that project's going to come through this process. Their project's in site plan review right now, but this is kind of a new approach to affordable housing. We're basically saying, you tell us where you need the relief rather than us creating an incentive. Tell us where you need relief. And so we'll see how this works. Right now it's a high bar. Again, to do 100% affordable housing with 80% AMI, you really need that low-income housing tax credit to make it work financially. We implemented the rules to allow recreational marijuana. Essentially, we took our medical marijuana standards and have now applied them to recreational. And so those have been approved by council that allows for these new uses associated with retail sales, basically testing facilities. We worked on ADUs. This is another area that a big focus is on for affordable housing. So accessory dwelling units. These are units that are allowed in addition to your standard density, right? So you can do an accessory unit. They are limited in size, but really it's a bonus unit in terms of density. You don't have to have a lot that can support 2 units. You can do the ADU without that density, meeting that density requirement. So we went back and revisited the setbacks. This was council initiated. Actually, they wanted to increase the size on an ADU from 600 to 800 square feet. So that's been approved. Some of you may know we have this covenant that runs with an ADU, which basically we require an owner to sign the covenant, and it's caused some issues and concerns. It basically says, you can't rent out both units separately. So you could rent out, an owner could live in the main unit or the ADU and rent out the second unit, or you could rent out both units together. The concern was that they were both going to become vacation rentals. And this was even before the trend of the last 5 years. And so now we've created this option where both units can be rented as long as you agree to a waiver that they won't be vacation rentals. So less than 30 days. We'll see how this goes. And so again, the idea is this will provide housing stock to folks living and not just income opportunities, which the income opportunities are important. I think we all recognize that in terms of having a vacation rental. So we'll see how that works. That was a change we've just adopted. Right now, another benefit of the ADU is you don't have to get the separate meter. For separate units, we require a separate meter and utility hookup, and there's a big cost associated with that. This now gives the option. If they want the second meter, they can, but they're not required. And then some things on the height of an interior unit, and then some language dealing with non-conforming units. So we've worked on ADUs this year. This is an outcome. The neighborhood community commercial is an outcome of the HOH plan. And so right now the community commercial zone exists in a lot of neighborhoods in Flagstaff, north of downtown, south of downtown, a lot of community commercial in Sunnyside. And this zone allows 60 feet in height. And so one of the recommendations was to lower the height in some of these neighborhoods to 45 feet. So at this point, the council has created this zone, but we've not rezoned anyone's property. And we're not looking to rezone any property at this point. We've just created the zone and are offering it to people who want to use it. If we get this zoning consultant on our board, we are going to do some additional community outreach and figure out, are there parts of the community where those property owners can support adopting this zone, yes or no? But I think we're going to be really slow and cautious on rezoning, city-initiated rezonings. At this point, it feels to me like we're probably just going to keep this zone and keep it available for now. But we'll see how that progresses. Again, we're working on modifications to outdoor lighting. Again, this is getting away from the low pressure sodium to the narrow band amber LEDs. We're working on implementing the HOH, again, doing some clarifications on affordable housing in HOH. And we already have this planned residential development. We need to kind of calibrate that again. The planned residential development allows a conventionally zoned district, so something in multifamily, let's say, or single family, to use one of the transect forms within that district. It's an administrative process. Again, we're looking at kind of elevating this tool due to the housing needs of the community. And then something that's available for our central business district. So basically the downtown north of the tracks, you can, basically the rule is if you don't have any parking on site, you can do a change of use, even increase the intensity a little bit without requiring bringing it up to the current standard, because it recognizes these are historic properties. We don't want to tear down buildings for parking lots. And so we're looking to expand that to the south side Central Business District. Moving into some of our projects, I'll go through these projects. These are bundled into the different development types. So some of the residential projects, many of you are probably aware of the rezoning that got approved at the beginning of July by council, the Aura project over near Ponderosa Trails. That was approved on a very narrow margin, 4-3, 160 apartments. 32 of those units will be affordable, targeted to 80% AMI, area median income, with, I believe, a 60-year term. The town's on Lone Tree, also known as Track 22. This is over at Lone Tree and J.W. Powell across from Pine Canyon. This was an administrative approval with a lot of participation from the Pinnacle Pines neighborhood, which is adjacent to this. A site plan was approved in January of this year for 210 apartments. Sky Cottages is a project out on the west side, Woody Mountain Road and Route 66. Council approved that rezoning for 199 apartments. There's an affordability component in that project as well. And then the lofts on the Mesa, this is up on McMillan Mesa. A site plan was approved in April of this year for another 154 units. So those are some of the multifamily projects, 2 rezonings, 2 site plans. I believe all 4 actually have a affordability component. For sure, Aura and Sky Cottages do.
Thank you, Dan.
Some really
If I
straight
could
up.
interject before we proceed,
Yes.
I apologize. Just to kind of keep us where we're at with, if you can go back to the last slide, I've just got a couple of questions that, do you happen to have a map or access that we can direct our members to for a map to see where these locations are? Although some of us are familiar with that Lone Tree Pulliam intersection is, where can we direct our members to access visuals for these projects?
So we do have our development status report. I don't know if we've mapped it yet. So I can look into, I know we've mapped our capital projects. I just don't think we've mapped all of the private development projects. But we could look at doing that as another resource for the community. Again, Aura is at the entrance to Ponderosa Trails. Towns on Lone Tree is right across from the Pine Canyon entrance between Pinnacle Pines and Pine Canyon. Sky Cottages is across from, it's on Woody Mountain Road across from the development there. Oh, why am I blanking on it? It's almost built out. The single family.
Presidio area.
Presidio, it's right across from Presidio, thank you. Really, Woody Mountain Road and Presidio. And then lofts on the Mesa is up on McMillan Mesa. But I can ask Alexandra Pucciarelli, she's our interim planning director, about mapping some of these.
That would be fantastic if we had a visual of those, just to kind of let our people know. And I know that each one of these kind of takes place at a different time frame. These are just the projects going forward. But 2 questions. One, most importantly, I think on the burning question of us is we're trying to provide people that live here in Flagstaff affordable housing. Our teachers, our doctors, our nurses. What percentage of these units in these different areas are we looking at being able to provide affordable housing for the people that create the community? And what are those efforts in regards to that to make sure that the people who live here, work here, create our community are able to live here affordably? Where's the city's approach on that?
So we can't require that they provide affordable housing. That's called inclusionary zoning. So it's a tool that's used all across the country, but the state of Arizona prohibits anyone from adopting inclusionary zoning. So we can't automatically say, 10% of your units must be affordable. But we offer incentives, okay? And so Aura is a good example where they used all of our incentives. They started out with a base density. They ended up with 32 units, which is 20% of the 160. So 32 of those units are going to be dedicated for 80% AMI, area median income. They're going to be rental units. And I believe they, rather than 30 years, which we consider permanent, they agreed to 60 years of affordability. The Sky Cottages is a good one. Again, it's a rezone. We can't require inclusionary zoning, but we tell folks, look, if you want to be successful with this council, you're going to have some contribution to affordability. Whether you're including affordable units in your project through our incentives program on your own, or making a financial contribution. We've had that as well. Sky Cottages, again, does have an affordability component. I forget all the details on that. But going back to Aura, for example, they use their base density, so the medium density, and then they use an incentive. They get a 45% density bonus if they use, if 20% of the units are dedicated as affordable. And so you take your base density, if you commit to affordability, you get a 45%, which in this case was 45 units. And this was part of the objection from the neighborhood there was, you know, by using the incentives, you're changing the density. It's a bonus, right? So they're rezoned to medium density, but when you do the math, it comes out to a high density, and that's because they're using a bonus density. And so, you know, staff's position is, well, if you keep it within the medium density range, it's not really a bonus, right? And so we've always recognized from the beginning that bonus means, yeah, you're going to be up into a higher range of density. And so that was one of the objections, but that's how the incentives are designed. Again, if it's not a bonus unit, if it's not more than what you can do in your standard range, then it's really not a bonus. And so that's how that works. But after we're done here, I'll share some more resources with you. I'll email those to you. And we do have some other reports that include more detailed information on the unit breakdown, et cetera. Does that help?
And I think that, you know, as I'm looking through these projects on this particular slide, you know, these are apartments. And I think that from my perspective and what we talk about on our board and our association, you know, one of the things that we as realtors really want to provide is home ownership. We understand that home ownership is a way to equity, which is a way to wealth and provides better quality of life. And that's what we want to be a part of. And that's what makes stronger communities at the end of the day, regardless. So when we think about apartments, we think about people that are able to, that's, you know, it allows people an entry level position to live in Flagstaff, but we want people that are able to commit to living here, that have a future in Flagstaff. That I feel extremely grateful that I've been able to provide my family a life. I've raised my two children here who are off in college now, who have grown up in Flagstaff, but I feel that being able to provide them a home, a stable area that we could commit to. So apartments are an entry level, but what are we doing for long-term family and community growth? I'm concerned that apartments may not be the best way to get people to live here, to commit to Flagstaff and have a strong community, versus having housing units where people can afford and commit and have a contribution and a benefit to living in Flagstaff and being a part of the community. So yeah, I would like to see if you can maybe touch on that now, or maybe that later.
We're seeing all kinds of residential development. So the last one on this list,
city is doing for that.
Yeah, no, we're seeing all kinds of development. It's not just apartments. I've taken a snapshot here. These are just a few sample projects.
Okay, good.
We're seeing a lot of, this is not everything. Okay. Again, we've got that development status report, which is much more comprehensive, and I'll send that to you when we're done. But like this Lofts on the Mesa, I believe are going to be home ownership. Those are going to be purchase. The top three are rental apartments. Right. Miramonte's doing that project over at Ponderosa and 66 behind the Culvers. Those are going to be ownership units. There are some affordable units in there as well that they're going to have deed restricted. So there's a mix of unit types, both rental and ownership being constructed. Attached townhomes, detached single family. I'm going to get to those here in a minute. So I think we're seeing growth on all areas.
Good. Okay, that's progress then, right? As far as being able to, I think where I'm getting to is I'm hoping that the city is seeing that need as well too, that this is a collaborative effort as far as the growth and sustainability and the benefit to Flagstaff as a whole is being able to provide home ownership. So I'm happy to see that that's where the city is going with those efforts.
No, that's affordability on all levels. I mean, this presentation is not focused on our housing section, but within our housing section, we focus on, we have a land trust, which is a home ownership opportunity. We've gotten some hard critiques on it. I get it. But the idea is with the city owns the land, you only have to finance the unit itself. So we've worked with home builders to try to get units into our land trust. We work on rental opportunities. We work on LIHTC, which can be rental or home ownership. And so this slide is showing 3 projects under construction where they've received a low-income housing tax credit, which is awarded by the state of Arizona, but they're tax credits that help finance these projects and close the gap between the cost to build it and the cost to deliver an affordable unit. Now, again, these are rental projects, but the ones you see on Fort Valley Apartments, they're privately funded using a low-income housing tax credit. FSL, the Foundation for Senior Living, their project is going to be here just a couple blocks north of City Hall. Again, they received a low-income housing tax credit. They're doing senior housing. The 142 apartments are going to be all for seniors. Again, targeted to 80% area median income. Another project that got a LIHTC tax credit is on South Lake Mary Road. So 76 apartments, again, using a low-income housing tax credit. Here's some mixed-use projects, which are going to include residential and commercial. The Flagstaff at 4th. So this is at the northeast corner of 4th Street and Butler. That actually was rezoned and approved by City Council. Those are going to be rental units with some commercial out in front. Forest Meadows, so the existing coal site, that was actually approved for a 100% residential project. Actually, it must be mixed use. They must be maintaining some commercial. We're not sure if that's going to go forward or not. The Coles has been approved. I'll bring it up here to relocate to the SCA tissue site. Park Place, this is off of South Milton at Saunders. So another mixed use project for housing off of South Milton. Miramonte at Butler is under construction. These are going to be 32 condominiums, so home ownership opportunity at the corner of Butler and San Francisco. That's a Miramonte project. I believe it's going to be 4 stories over commercial on the ground floor. And then, of course, everyone, you can't miss the Uncommon, the very large mixed-use project on Milton. Again, 317 dwelling units with commercial on the ground floor. Again, some of the other sectors where we're seeing activity in the industrial institutional sector, medical is still very strong. Here's a list of 2 medical projects. This does not include the Northern Arizona Healthcare, NAH. They've submitted their application to build a medical campus east of Fort Tuthill along I-17. It would relocate the hospital along with a lot of medical. I believe there's almost 1 million square feet of commercial and medical within that proposal. They've filed that application. It's just the very beginning part of review. So that's going to be a very big community conversation. And then the Mountain Line Downtown Connection Center, they received federal transit dollars to build a transit center. We're working on that site plan. They're going to be taking down what's called the old warehouse at the west end of the existing DCC, but putting up a new transit center where that warehouse is. The first phase will keep the bus bays as they are and all of the parking as it is, with a potential future phase to redo the bus bays for more bus service. But for now, it's really focused on the facility itself, having a building where their riders, their staff, their drivers can come in, use the building, buy a bus pass, use the facilities there. There'll be some other office opportunities for other partners, and really establishing this location to serve Mountain Line's needs into the future. Yes, you're right. You're reading this correctly. The site plan for In-N-Out has been approved. We approved it conditionally about 2 months ago. They were still in review with ADOT over their transportation impact analysis. ADOT approved it last week. We allowed them to move into building permits before the ADOT approval. And so the building permit is in review. The civil plans are in review. In-N-Out is going to happen. It's at the location of the Pizza Hut on South Milton. The Pizza Hut will be removed, and that will be the location of the In-N-Out for Flagstaff. So I would anticipate construction beginning later this year. I mentioned this one. Kohl's is looking to relocate over to the old SCA tissue site on Butler, right before Ponderosa. A conditional use permit was approved for that, and so they would remove the SCA tissue site. All those buildings be basically a box store on the east side of the site with some other commercial opportunities on the west side, and then they've retained some industrial use between the tracks and this commercial part. Again, these are just some examples. A Panda Express out at the mall. The West Side Vet Clinic is beginning construction over on the west side at Woodland Boulevard. Again, this is a small snapshot of commercial projects. And then subdivision, two projects that have been years in the making, really Canyon Del Rio, many decades in the making. That rezoning was approved in 2020. They've actually now processed their first subdivision plats. And so you're going to be seeing the first phase are some single family and some townhomes. These will be home ownership opportunities. They're coming in really quickly with some rental opportunities, some apartment buildings at Canyon Del Rio. But really the overall unit count on Canyon Del Rio is up in the 1,200 unit count over the life of the project. So they'll start bringing in subdivisions for, again, single family detached, single family attached, some apartment buildings. Timber Sky is the same way. I think over 100 units are under construction right now, 100 rooftops. They're processing the next phase of subdivision plats. Here you see, again, some duplex, some single family detached. So we're going to start seeing these in different phases. Again, rooftops are being built as additional phases are going through the subdivision process. So again, this will be a mix of ownership and rentals. I think the majority of these units in Timber Sky and Canyon Del Rio are going to be ownership opportunity with some rentals.
This sounds very optimistic as far as getting some residential units. How do you feel as far as where the city is in regarding working towards rentals versus home ownership based on the projects that are being submitted and accepted?
You know, we don't pick the projects that get submitted. A lot of people think we do. We don't decide, you know, are there enough yogurt shops in town? Are there enough yoga studios? Or, you know, this is where people come to us, and if it's a permitted use and they have the zoning, we process the application. You know, the same things with housing. We don't pick, you know, rental versus ownership. We process everything that comes to us. So our housing program, what we're focused on are all types of housing, and I think we're seeing a good mix of housing types. You know, I will share some other data that we've got that tracks single family, detached versus multifamily. We're starting to track those numbers. Again, I think we're seeing annual growth in all these areas, which is a good thing. You know, it's going to take all different types of housing types to meet the housing need, rentals, ownership, different entry points into the market, right? And so I think we're feeling like we're getting all different types of housing types, and that's a good thing. You know, some are more focused on specific price points than others. Some are going to be that big A affordable where they're really targeting the 80% AMI. Others are going to be what they call just, you know, workforce housing. So somebody who's a teacher, somebody who works in law enforcement, you know, what type of homes can they get into? I know Timber Sky is trying to deliver homes that meet that income range that doesn't need a subsidy, that doesn't need something to be targeted at 80% AMI. So, you know, we don't go out and try to bring developers to Flagstaff. Community development doesn't. That's EV. Economic Vitality does that. They look to bring in employers and different housing groups at times. So I do feel like, you know, we're seeing some success. You know, it's always going to be a struggle. Will we ever fully meet the need? Folks who've been here a long time have said they've been talking about housing for 50 years. So, you know, it's always been a challenge in Flagstaff. I think it's just even more amped up than ever, really due to the cost of land, the cost of building materials has gone up. The demand has gone up for a variety of reasons, not only NAU, but attractive second home market. You all know that. But also now people believe there's an impact from the pandemic, that with remote working becoming a real reality for so many people, it just puts even more pressure on our market, that folks can come live in an attractive place like Flagstaff, but work for a company in, New York or California. And so again, it's just, there's continuing added pressure on the market, I believe.
Sure, absolutely. We're seeing that. I'm sure that y'all are feeling that as well. Do you feel like there's more of more projects are being submitted for rental versus home ownership?
Not really. I think I'll get you those numbers. You'll see there's a good mix of home, like this last slide here, these are pretty much all for purchase.
Right, right.
And what's being built out in Timber Sky right now, again, over 100 rooftops under construction, not included in these numbers. Those are traditional detached single family homes, I think with a range of price points. I've been told they tend to be toward the higher end right now.
Timber Sky is toward the
Yes.
higher end. Okay.
That's
And
what I've been
Canyon Del
told.
Rio, I assume just based on that area and the 100 units that are there, my understanding is those are supposed to be more spread out, and that would mean to more higher end as well. Is that correct?
There's going to be a mix. They're not doing a lot of the quarter acre, half acre lots. These are meant to be, I think it's, it's a little higher density. There's going to be a mix really over the 1,200 units over the life of the project. So, but I do think there's more of a focus on a little smaller lot to get a little higher density, which keeps the price point down a little bit.
Right.
I mean, that was the concept at Presidio. And we get mixed results. Some people like it, some people don't. Not having a big yard, but that's how you get more units. And theoretically, that's how you can lower the cost of the unit at the end of the day. But again, there's so many pressures on the market that some days it feels like the only way to really deliver an affordable unit is to close that gap, either through a housing tax credit or some other subsidy to meet that targeted area median income. But
and it sounds like, I mean, based on these projects, obviously there's a desire for people to want to live in Flagstaff, but you're seeing developers want to come in and actually meet that supply, meet that demand based on these projects. And do you see that as something that's going to continue for Flagstaff for the next few years? That developers will want to come here and actually build and provide that demand.
Yeah, I mean, I think our trend of the last couple of years show that when folks can get financing to build projects, they're going to come to Flagstaff and build projects.
Okay.
Like our numbers keep
city,
going
I know
up.
some of the. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And I think that some of the things that we see on our side, and there's a couple of questions that we'll get to with that as well, is that sometimes the cost to build for developers to come in and build, there are quite a bit of few issues for people to want to develop here. And so it's limiting our own local developers for wanting to come and build because of the cost and some of the, I guess, lack of a better word, red tape to be able to build here. We'll talk about some of the specifics, but does the city plan on changing any of those guidelines so that it makes it a little bit easier for maybe some of our local developers, or make it more affordable for developers so that we can provide more affordable housing units? Because I think that's some of the issues, the roadblocks that we see as far as providing affordable units, is the cost to develop here in Flagstaff tends to be fairly high compared to some of the other sister areas.
Yeah, so we do hear quite often that, it's the Flagstaff regulations that are driving the cost of housing. And I'm not going to debate that. We ask for a lot. I'm the first one to admit it. We have a lot of standards. We have resource protection. We have, LID, low impact development, which is a stormwater management. We have design standards. We want folks to put infrastructure in, right? We want people to make the connections to the Foots Trail and build the sidewalk. And we want all this quality development that the city, frankly, just can't, finance on its own. And that's in our regional plan, that development will pay for itself. It's a great concept. People can buy into that. But when the rubber meets the road, what does it mean development pays for itself? Well, it means there's a lot of costs on the back of development, and that's going to impact the cost of the unit. I also think the cost of land and labor and materials plays a role as well. But to that end, we have a listening tour going on that I've spearheaded under the direction of the city manager's office. And we're working in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. And we've probably held 8 of these sessions. And so it's myself, Deputy City Manager Shane Dilley, Rick Barrett, our city engineer from the Chamber. We've got Guillermo Cortez from SWI. representing the chamber, and Mark Woodson, another local engineer with Woodson Engineering. So that's we've called it a listening tour. And so I'd be happy to have any of you participate if you want. It's really mostly focused on our customers. So engineers, architects, contractors, folks who come and do business with community development, who have to pull permits. We're engaging them. How's our customer service? If you were in charge, what are 3 things you would change in our development code? What are things that you believe are impacting the cost of projects, not just housing, but commercial? And so we're doing this listening tour with the idea that, yeah, we're going to investigate what are things we could change in our process and our standards to help make it a better experience, whatever that is. How long it takes to get a permit, going through our concept and site plan process. What can we do to make that smoother, quicker? Yet at the same time, we also have the side of, this is Flagstaff. We have expectations. We want quality development, not just development. And so finding that balance is a challenge. But our listening tour is looking exactly what you're talking about, is what can we do to try to lower the cost of projects, make it happen faster. On housing specific, we've got our housing commission and our housing program working on a housing plan. With the housing crisis resolution that our council adopted, it said we're going to have a 10-year housing plan. And so again, this idea of having plans that anyone could come in and just pull a permit on, there's an idea of how to lower the cost of a dwelling unit. We'll have a set plan that somebody could come in, like a model plan set that they could come in and build a home on their property without having the expense of, drawing up plans, paying an architect, doing the plan review. And so those are ideas that have come out of this housing plan. We also have this incentive policy review. So I mentioned our formal affordable housing incentives. We're doing a top to bottom review of those incentives. Why are some used and some aren't? What are incentives we need to bolster? And so those are the 3 areas those are all active projects that are happening with the goal of, trying to kind of self-examine our policies and procedures and what can we do to make them better.
Fantastic.
It's not an easy
That's
fix,
very
right?
positive to hear.
Yeah, it's not an easy fix.
Sure.
Because again, Flagstaff, we're very aspirational. We want to retain the character and the feel of the community, right? And so we're trying to find that balance, I think.
Right, and it's changed. I mean, we were talking about this last week. We had the Coconino Planning and Development, and stats showed that from last year, our county alone was number 6 in the top 10 counties that people were moving to. So not only has this desire to live in Flagstaff been increasing on a steady level, but we had a huge surge. And so the city, I'm sure, is having to adapt to meet that demand as well, and what those restrictions need to be as far as providing, good affordable homes and people places to live, but also what those requirements need to be for in the future planning of Flagstaff with energy sustainability as well. So you guys have got a lot on your plate, I'm sure.
We do, and it's this kind of push-pull, right? We want really great neighborhoods, right? With connectivity, with sidewalks, right, with curb and gutter, obviously sewer and water, but somebody's got to pay for all that, right? And so the model is, well, the developer has to pay for it. Putting in the subdivision and all the public improvements, and there's a huge expense there. We understand that, but if it's not the developer, then the city has to fund it somehow out of general fund or some other source. And so finding that balance, if we didn't require sidewalks in a neighborhood, would it really lower the cost of the unit? I don't know. But shouldn't everybody have access to sidewalks? I don't know.
I agree.
There are policy decisions that currently we require these things, but should we waive it in the name of trying to lower the cost?
It's a hard decision, but when I go and just on my own individual experience, touring people around neighborhoods, people want to be outside. They move to Flagstaff to enjoy the great outdoors. So having a sidewalk or having access to the food trail or access to the Forest Service, or even walkability within the city, just being able to. And so it's good to see that you guys are also focusing on the bike and pedestrian routes as well, because obviously you guys are aware of that need and that desire for people to want to be able to access things without motorized vehicle transportation.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we've already have 9 questions, and if this is a good time to pause, or do we need to kind of maybe proceed with a few more slides before we take some questions at this
No,
point?
I'm done. Yeah, that was all my slides, so I can take this down here.
Okay.
I'll
Great.
stop sharing.
Great. Okay. So first question from Misty Dusty Roden. How do we get information for changes that have occurred? I.e., had clients building a home in Flagstaff, and evidently there was a change to the type of windows that would be required for new construction. It was a huge, and huge is in capitals, so this was huge, price increase, and thank goodness, since they had already ordered all the windows and had them on site, they were allowed to proceed with the windows already ordered. And so I'm familiar with this because Dusty had explained this. And Dusty, correct me if I'm wrong in this, but in mid-construction, mid-build, the city had changed the requirement for what types of windows needed to be built into this home. And so that could obviously change the price substantially for what people are looking at to. And of course, with the low supply and people looking for new construction, some of the concern that we see in our field is what should we prepare our clients for if the city is going to change requirements for windows, energy efficiency items, which not necessarily are bad things, but if we're looking at going into, if the building process is 9 to 12 months, if they're 6 months into it, and then we find out the city has changed what the requirements are for those things, what that cost looks like. Could it be 15 to 30% based more than what they had anticipated spending on a new construction project? What are some of those changes that have occurred, and what changes may be coming down the pipe that we need to prepare our clients for as far as what may impact their cost of construction?
So when we adopted the 2018 suite of building codes, it did have a new energy efficiency requirement for windows. So we did all that work in 2019, and Amy Palmer and her team worked very closely with contractors, engineers. We tried to do a lot of outreach, letting people know what the changes were. We don't just adopt them on day one. There's the code was adopted in 2018. Or 2019, became effective, I believe, January 1 of 2020. And so we try to let people know that this change is coming, and we do everything we can to inform contractors and everyone. I'm not familiar with the situation Dusty's brought up. Hi, Dusty, by the way. I know Dusty. I used to be a neighbor of Dusty, and I worked with her here at City Hall. But the situation, in the middle of a permit, if we've issued a permit, we can't change what kind of windows are required in the middle of a construction. I don't know the situation, but when you get a building permit, you get to build that project, right? We can't come back and change the specs because our code changed in the middle of after a permit was issued. That's not lawful. So again, I don't know the details of what happened, but we really do try to work closely with our development community. Amy does monthly meetings with NABA, Northern Arizona Builders Association. They get all of our, I can see you're drinking wine there. You're lucky you. I know.
No, it's water, I promise.
Oh, it's water.
But it's
You're
9
in
o'clock
Paris,
in Paris, so I have had some wine, but it's water at this point. Just wanted to clarify.
But we work closely with NABA so that these kind of changes can get out to their membership. Not everybody hears about the changes, but again, we can't change the requirements in the middle of a construction when they've been issued a permit.
That's good to know. Okay. So Dusty, if this is something that maybe we need to touch on a little bit more, if you want to unmute yourself, just a clarification on this situation, that's good to know. I wasn't aware of that once the permit has been provided, they can't go back and change those things. And so that should give our clients some guarantee that once they get the permit that's approved, whatever they planned on building should not change in the construction process. Understand you correctly, Dan?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So Dusty, did you have a different situation, or where are we at with what your concern is, just to clarify? If you're on mute, you might need to unmute because I don't hear you just yet. Okay, so, and her follow-up question was, we'll move on in case she can engage with us. We'll get you a copy. Well, this is all going to be taped on YouTube. So our questions, all of that, the PowerPoint will be provided as well. And Dan, if you want to send us a copy of the PowerPoint, we can attach that to people as well. But we do have a Northern Arizona YouTube channel, and so it'll be provided, and we'll provide that link for you so that you can catch on to that link and see this recording of all of this, so you get all the information. Moving on, Chad Dragos, ADU to be stick-built or whatever the existing zoning is correct. He just wants to clarify that whatever is built in that particular zoning, that accessory dwelling unit would be the same type, or can you, for instance, put maybe a modular tiny house, casita, with a stick-built home, just to clarify?
Yeah, no, the ADU doesn't need to be stick-built. It just needs to meet building codes. So we do have codes for kind of pre-manufactured units, or, you know, one of the trends to lower costs is to build components off-site and then bring those components to the job site. So it's not necessarily a modular home. A true modular is inspected by the state of Arizona. They put their sticker on it. We just inspect the utility hookups and the slab it's put on. But one of the trends is to kind of, pre-construct components and bring it to site. But yeah, ADUs can be any kind of construction that meets the building code.
Oh, great. That's
it's got to be safe and meet the occupancy requirements for someone to live in it.
Okay. And occupancy requirements such as?
Like you have to have a bathroom and a kitchen. It can't just be a shed that you bought from Home Depot and you want to let somebody live in the shed in your backyard. It needs to meet health safety codes for habitation. So there's minimum size requirements for a bathroom and a separate sink for a kitchen, not the same as your bathroom sink. And we do want it to be hooked up to sewer and water. So we've done the math. We figure the minimum size is about 400 square feet to meet the minimum standards of occupancy for a dwelling unit.
Great, good to know. 400 minimum square feet. And is there a maximum that we should advise
There
our
is.
clients?
It just got increased to, I think it was 600 square feet, but it's now up to 800 square feet for an ADU.
Okay, good to know. Great. Okay, thank you. And then Stephen Broadus asked, homeowners need a business license. Do homeowners need a business license for operating a short-term rental? And can you speak more to this regarding short-term rentals?
They do now. So it's a little bit of a complicated issue. Again, the state of Arizona precluded local jurisdictions from treating vacation rentals any differently than any other residential property. So in other words, you can't require a conditional use permit, but the state has allowed cities to require a business license. And so consistent with what the state allows to do a short-term rental, vacation rental in Flagstaff, you do need to get a business license.
What would happen if somebody did not? Are there repercussions for people that decided to continue with the business but did not get that license?
Yeah, I mean, they may get a knock on the door from one of our code compliance folks to confirm, are you actually operating a vacation rental? And then we would ask them to get the license. There's potential penalties. I don't think we've written any tickets for anyone who doesn't have the license, but we very much do voluntary enforcement. We try to get people to comply voluntarily. We don't write a lot of tickets and take people in front of judges. That's very rare, especially on something like this. But there's potential.
Because it's fairly new as far as implementing this? Is that something that we expect to maybe, are people abusing that at this point?
I couldn't tell you how many people are running them without licenses. That's really our finance department. But our approach on all code compliance is voluntary. We are not heavy-handed. We give people a lot of time to comply. This is a range, anything from garbage issues to occupancy, lighting issues is more common. You know, the use of a property is not, we don't get a whole lot of those for code compliance. It's usually more about some other issue with the property, but they do look into the use of the property and that it's permitted and that they have the required licenses.
Great. Okay. And James, I think hopefully I've answered your question already. Your question was requesting a copy of the slide presentation, if I may. So again, YouTube, yeah, so we can, Dan, if you don't mind sending that to us, we'll attach that as well. But again, this is being recorded. You can catch on to our YouTube channel and catch off this presentation here and pause and play and fast forward and rewind as you'd like. Mark Coletti asked, I would love to see the project spreadsheet put together by the city of all projects proposed, approved, etc. in the city. One similar was shared at NAR lunch about 18 months ago. A spreadsheet, that's true. We had you guys, you might remember, 18 months ago, pre-COVID, when you're actually coming to see us in live, and it was a great presentation, which is why we love having y'all come back every year, because we thrive on these updates. Do you have a spreadsheet, and how do we access that?
Yep, it's called our project status report. We still maintain it. I will send you all the links. They're all posted on our website. So we have a bunch of different reports, development status reports. So that lists a lot of different projects by category. It's got an address, typically a short description of the project and where it is in the review. And then we've got our monthly permit reports, so what we've issued building permits for. And then the activity, which looks at valuation and dwelling units. So I've got a whole bunch of these reports. I will send you all the links. They're all posted every month on our website. And I'll make sure you have all of those.
Fabulous. That would be great. And is it easily accessible? So, you know, one analogy that we had our Coconut County was instead of giving us the fish, giving us the information, teach us how to fish. Our job is to be resourceful. So instead of bugging you guys every time to get these questions, maybe you can just show us how to access this information ourselves via the website. And so maybe towards the end of this presentation, you could just share your screen, go to the website, click on those links, and guide us through where we can access that information.
Sure.
If that's doable
Yeah.
on our end.
I'd be happy to do that.
Fantastic.
I was going to send you the links to our website, but I'll navigate it for you. Absolutely. I can show you where everything is.
Fantastic. I think if we have one main website, and then you can just show us where to go from there, it could be a plethora of information for us. Great. Okay. And then Mark Coletti's second question is, have any plans been discussed, in parentheses, in quotations, with the city by Symmetry Partners and the 400 acres acquired recently? So stay tuned, Mark Coletti. We'll have you talk about that, Dan, but we're also going to have Symmetry talk with us in a couple of weeks here on their projects. But Dan, in regards to that question, what can you tell us about Symmetry's development of those 400 state land trusts that they bought?
They've not filed anything that I'm aware of or had any pre-application meeting yet. We know they've purchased the property from State Land Department. I believe Capstone is involved with that as well. And Capstone's getting ready to start doing phases of Juniper Point. There's another example. I didn't bring that subdivision up, but they platted, I think, maybe 20 lots, 25 lots for first phase of Juniper Point. But I don't believe anything has been filed yet on the newly acquired property.
Okay. I talked with Symmetry, and they're talking about a certain percentage of those 400 acres to also be part of affordable housing as well. So do you have any information on that specifically, or should we just stay tuned?
I don't have any information on their plans.
Okay, great. So Mark, stay with us. And I think it's in the 3 weeks from now, we'll have Symmetry join us with the update from them specifically. So a good question. Shane Randall asks, is the drought and water supply enough for these developments? We're a desert state, and it hasn't changed, but with the climate situation going on right now, obviously water, more development, more water being drawn. What does the city see as far as that being a concern to supply and provide that security for water supply for developments?
Yeah. Now you should really invite Erin Young to come speak to your group. Erin is our acting water services director, but she's in charge of she manages our water supply. And so, you know, I think our team would tell you, yes, we are water secure. They have a model, you know, certain developments trigger a water sewer impact analysis. And so that's all plugged into the model, but I'm not the expert on water in our organization, but I think the short answer is they would tell you yes. And I would encourage you to have Erin Young come and speak. She's got a great presentation on how Flagstaff manages our water supply and what the plan is that's in place. We have a designation from the state for being one of the top water planning groups in the state or something to that effect. I forget the language, but we do a lot of water planning. Yes.
Good. That's good. And I suppose you have to, given that we're a drought state. So fantastic. Okay. And Mark Coletti also asked, regarding resource protection, the apartment project on Fort Valley does not appear to have meaning the regarding resource protection. So that's a question. I know that's been a source of contention for the city as far as using that plot of land on Fort Valley for apartments. Maybe speak more onto that as far as resource protection.
So I think you're talking about, that was on our list here. I think it's the 180 units on Fort Valley Road. They got the low-income housing tax credit. the one that has the massive excavation that happened. I don't know the specifics on that one. I can look into it if they're within the resource protection overlay or not. But I do know there are projects that happen where it appears they've not done any resource protection, but in reality they have. You really have to look at the site plan and see where the trees are. I believe on that site, they've saved a lot of trees at the top to help buffer along the street that's up there and the neighborhood that's up there. But I'm not clear if that project had to comply with our resource protection standards or not. It all depends on whether it's in the resource protection overlay. But I wouldn't assume because they did a lot of cutting that they've not complied with it. But I can find out more on that one and follow up with you.
And if I can, being married to the fuel specialist for the Coconino National Forest, who is involved in the 4-Fry project, management of the forest and fuels, the timber, the whole aspect of things. I know that it's odd to see because Flagstaff people move here for the trees, but actually we're only supposed to have 10 ponderosa pines per acre, and we have 1,000. So we've got a substantial percentage more, 100% more ponderosa pines than actually what the ecosystem has been designed to provide. So it's hard, and I'm not necessarily downplaying your concern, Mark, is in regards to resource protection with trees being thinned and things thin out. So I'm not sure if I'm touching on your concern there as well. But with thinning, we actually create a little bit more fire protection. So that's actually protecting resources when we look at not necessarily timber, but grassland and water being specific, because the more pine trees we have per plot of land per acre, that draws more water from the ground. And so when we talk about resources, are we talking about trees or are we talking about water? Because they don't necessarily mix compatibilely with what we're looking at as far as resource in that regard. So that's just something that I see being married to a forester. When people talk about trees being gone, that we actually have more trees than we actually need. And the less trees that we have in some regard, the more grassland we have, more wildlife, the better the ecosystem and the more watershed we're able to provide for our resources in that regard. So is there anything, Dan, that maybe you can touch on as far as the city's approach to that?
Yeah, I mean, resource protection is one of those areas that I see it as it's a requirement that we have that reflects our community values, right? And so our resource protection standards are not simple. It's not a simple, save 20% of the trees. We have a point system, and it's based on, the size and the quality of the tree. We want to encourage retention of mature trees over, dying trees or younger trees. And so again, but this comes up a lot in the listening tour. When I say, what are one of the things you would change if you were in charge? And resource protection is always at the top of the list. Builders feel like, their resource protection requirements takes away land that they could build on and ultimately increases the cost of that unit. But yet resource protection represents a huge value in Flagstaff, right? This is why we love living here, is the forest and the trees. And so whenever you see a beautiful piece of land that was covered in trees, all those trees coming down, it's shocking to people and it's upsetting. But they may still be doing resource protection. But again, this is one of those value discussions where it feels like we're pitting the value of the cost of housing against the value of saving trees. And so, this is going to be a hard discussion. If we come back and say, look, we've been asked to relook at our resource protection standards, and should they be less or, should they be reduced in the name of, the cost of building? We do have an incentive where you can get it. If you do affordable housing, you can do less resource protection. That's one that ORA used. And so that, again, can be controversial, pitting values against each other. And so these are hard discussions. But the resources that we regulate are trees, slope, and stormwater.
So, and to that, as far as trees, because I'm with you, when I first moved here, I was so upset when I saw that people were doing prescribed fires, later to marry a wildland firefighter, but where they were purposely going out and burning trees. And so it's an education as far as people go. But we talk about resources, trees versus understanding and educating people that, healthy trees means in less than those trees, more mature trees versus the spindly pines that take up more water. Actually, the resource is water. And I think the focus needs to be more so on providing water sustainability versus having a completely dense, a lot full of trees. It's not actually a healthy ecosystem for that particular land or overall Flagstaff. Is that something the city pays attention to?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have a whole program. The
Water versus tree
I can't
density.
even, again, I'm not so involved in it, but yeah, our fire department, sustainability, water services, you know, all the forestry work that's being done is really under the notion of, yeah, resource protection and water management, right? And so they're all connected. I think our teams are working really well on that stuff. Again, it's not my day-to-day world, so I'm not the expert on it, but you could bring in folks from our fire department, from sustainability, about the connection between forest management and water resources. There's obviously a close connection there, but I'm not the expert.
Absolutely. And maybe we just need to make that more of a collaborative educational avenue for people to be able to access. So not your job necessarily, but that's something that I think would kind of bring those things together so people have a better idea as far as the forest that you really need to see and understanding a healthy forest and healthy resources to provide for sustainable growth. So different topic. We'll hit you with next year, Dan. So we'll catch up with you on that.
I would just say, you know, there is a connection between all these issues, right? So one of the critiques of our review process is there are so many people reviewing it. Well, yeah, the fire department reviews it, water services reviews it, sustainability, streets, engineering, planning, stormwater. All these folks review these plans, right? And that adds time. But they each represent a value, right, or a requirement. And so, you know, what are we willing to give on? Certainly not public safety. You know, so these are those tough conversations about, you know, critiquing the process. You know, it's not just community development that's reviewing a permit. It's folks throughout the organization. We're the single point of contact. We're the one issuing the permits, but we're gathering all these comments from all these different programs and getting them to our applicants. And, you know, that's one of the challenge of reviewing projects in a timely way.
Sure. Well, and it's good that to at least to know that you guys are aware of these issues so that when they come to you, that it sounds like from the city's perspective, y'all are taking these different aspects into consideration. I think that's where I was going with my question as far as resource management with timber versus water supply. Sustainability, all these different things. You guys have quite a few challenges, so good to know. Switching gears a little bit, Dan, unless there's anything that you want to touch on that to follow up on those concerns. And before we leave, absolutely, I think we've got about 15 minutes before we'll let you go. We certainly appreciate your time. You know, student housing seems to be a big issue in Flagstaff, and I know several years ago, NAU, it was, you know, we wanted to have growth of Flagstaff was really predetermined based on the growth that NAU foresaw providing for student housing. And so we see all these developments going up for student housing. And then, you know, nationally, but even before the pandemic, we were seeing significant decreases in student enrollment. So therefore, students needed housing. When we have a housing supply in general for people that live here, work here, that benefit the community, that pay taxes for the community. And so we have these different student housing developments going forward. What does the city see as far as, because I kind of see these things going up and I'm thinking, I don't think the demand is there anymore. The stats don't necessarily prove that, and I'm not seeing that as a resident living here. What are some of the concerns as far as maybe some of these student housing projects being vacant? And is the city looking at some point, maybe this is a long-term question that you don't have an answer for, these vacancies that were supposed to be student housing, are we going to maybe convert those into affordable housing units for people versus developing anything else in Flagstaff?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes this surprises people. You know, when we're reviewing a concept plan, a site plan, a building permit, we don't ask for an economic analysis of whether there's a market for what you want to build. You know, we don't pick winners and losers in community development. Is there enough student housing? You know, it depends on who you ask. Some people say, well, there's way too much, there's not enough, or there's just right. But I guess time will tell if these projects get leased up or not. And again, we don't control the future use of the building either. It's private property. Would the city intervene if a building was vacant to purchase it or offer some incentive to convert it to affordable housing? Maybe. I don't see that as the direction we're heading in affordable housing. But, you know, again, another topic that could take up a whole session is this rental assistance demonstration. It's called RAD. And our housing program has put out a solicitation. We're going to find a partner to try to redevelop our assets, right? So all the public housing that we own that's fairly low density, built in the 1950s through 1970s, how can we redevelop our public housing to a higher density? The way to do it with the HUD model called RAD is to find a private equity partner. And so that's what we're doing through this RAD process. That might include buying additional properties and somehow converting them into some other use or for some other targeted resident. But I will tell you this, at one of those hearings where a big student housing project was being considered and people don't like the floor plan, it's 5-bedroom, 5-bath, rented by the room. Somebody asked Sarah Dar, our housing manager, our housing director, what do you think of this? And her comment was, the person who needs a place to live doesn't care what the floor plan looks like. They don't care if it's 5-bedroom, 5-bath, or 3-bedroom, 1-bath. If there's a unit that they can afford to live in and it's safe and it's clean and it's affordable, they will want to live there. And so I think staff is less hung up on these floor plans and who they're being built for. It's just, will they be available? And so we'll see how it plays out. Some say the student housing units should, provide relief on the pressure on other units in the community and free up units at a different level. I don't know. We haven't seen that yet. The cost has not gone down yet. So is there a point where the availability will lower the cost? I'm not sure. Time will tell.
And I think maybe the heart of my question is where some people feel the city is focused more on student housing versus affordable housing. And what would be your comment or response to that?
Yeah, I'd say we're much more focused on affordable housing. We review the projects that come to us. We did nothing to try to attract student housing developers to Flagstaff, community development. We did not ask them to come to town. They just came here because there's a market, right? And they started building a building type that we hadn't seen before, the very large student-oriented apartment building. And I think it's a reflection of the market. We didn't ask them to come here, the city of Flagstaff.
No, not necessarily, but things were approved based on what projected growth. And at that time, NAU was projecting growth to be, I think, 40% by 2025, or maybe even less than that. I forget my stats, so I apologize. And so there was an effort to create more student housing. And a few years ago, there was the intent or thought that if we provide more student housing, arbors, apartments, for instance, and some other locations where students rent, that would free up other places where homeowners could actually buy condos, for instance, versus rentals, and have those as affordable housing versus students living in those. And so there was this shift to providing more development for student housing so that they could free up what was already developed for home ownership. And then seeing that enrollment has dropped significantly, not just in Flagstaff, but nationwide. And then, of course, the pandemic made that increase even more. And so, I know among many of us, and for people that I see, residents that live here, the demand is not so much that we need student housing, we need affordable housing, we need home ownership. And so these projects that are still in the works that were projected 4 or 5 years ago to provide student housing is no longer the need. And so does the city have a plan in adjusting for the housing situation of student versus home ownership?
Yeah, again, we don't pick the projects that we review. So yes, we have a plan. We're developing a 10-year plan to try to increase affordability in Flagstaff and the number of affordable housing units available. We have a plan to do that. But again, we don't pick and choose whether we should issue a permit for the next student housing project because there's no demand left. That's the risk of the owner and the bank and everyone else. I know this is and I think that's at the heart of your question. I know you keep asking me that. Do we have a plan to respond to the market? We're developing a plan to try to increase housing opportunities, but we don't respond to the market like, well, there's no market left for this project, we shouldn't issue the permit. We can't do that. That's not the way land use works in this country. So, or this state. So
no, I understand that. I'm just wondering how is the city responding to the shift and the demand from student housing to freeing up more units to that? I guess maybe the concern, or what we can't answer right now, is we don't know necessarily how the the city is going to plan on that. You guys respond to what is submitted to you based on projects. You don't have a say necessarily as far as these questions that I'm asking in regards to these other developments and the response and what's evolved in our housing situation.
I mean, we are working very hard to provide, to get more affordable housing available to our residents. That's what we're doing. But, again, we have limited tools. We review the projects that come to us. I think we have attracted some housing projects. Folks like the folks doing the project up on 180.
I'm not trying to press you necessarily. I'm just looking at, I know.
I don't know, how should we respond to the changing market? Maybe I should put it back.
And I know you guys have faced a few battles such as.
I don't have all the answers, so how should we respond to the market?
Yeah.
As the market changes? You're the real estate professionals.
Yeah, good.
What should we do?
Well, and that's where we come to you. I mean, we are kind of the, and we are kind of the liaison between where our clients, people that come to us to buy in Flagstaff, as well as the clients that we've already served that live here in Flagstaff and their concerns. And we hear all the time about the concern with student housing that continues to kind of go up. And, I think the city has evolved in thinking that, you're listening. And that's a good thing. You're listening to the voices of people that don't necessarily want any more student housing. And so my question is, where is the city in regards to the fact that we have these plans? And it takes a while. The plans go by, you guys, the permits that are submitted 5 or 6 years ago, it may take 3 years for these things to actually be developed. And of course, things happen over time. And so when we have these student housing developments that may not be utilized as student housing developments, does the city look at the best ways to utilize those things? And your response to that is these are private properties. We don't necessarily have a say to that. We approve the project as they come in. I think I'm just probably asking a question that many clients come to us asking is, where is the city in regards to looking at future plans for student housing and student housing developments that are already developed or continue to be developed that may not need to be utilized for student housing? And I don't know that you have the answer for that, so I apologize that that's not an appropriate question.
I mean, I understand your question. It's just we don't, so one of the ideas that came out through this, all the work we're doing on housing and our incentive programs is, so these large mixed-use buildings like the Hub, the Standard, they were able to achieve their density because they were mixed use. So they had to offer some commercial space. Well, we all see those commercial spaces are empty, right? There's examples all over town. So they built their units, but they have done nothing to try to attract a commercial tenant. And there's a bunch of reasons why that's the case. And so one of the ideas that came out of our housing commission was the city should allow that commercial space to be converted to residential. And we did present that to council as an idea. I think staff, we've struggled with how to do that because there's a bunch of reasons. It's just not quite that simple, but we've not been directed to change the code to allow that to be converted to housing. I mean, I guess there's an example that would address your question. If these buildings are not finding a commercial tenant, shouldn't the city allow it to be converted? Well, none of these folks have come to us yet to ask, but there was an outside interest saying you should allow them to convert it. And so there's an opportunity where the city could do something in our code to probably allow that ground floor commercial space to be converted to housing. That's something that may come out of this housing plan and out of the housing incentive work. It's on the list of things to do. We just haven't figured out how to change the code to allow that. We do want, the idea of the mixed use is you're providing services where people live, right? So they don't have to get in their car and drive to the grocery store. The idea is they could walk to a grocery store, they could go have dinner downstairs. And so that's the idea of mixed use, is you're creating opportunities. And we have these activity centers where we're allowing this high occupancy housing. It has to be in an activity center. And the idea is to, again, create places where you could live and work and shop without having to get in your car for everything, right? That's the idea. Yeah. Commercial tenants have always lagged throughout the history of mixed use, I think.
No, that certainly helps. And so I know that takes a little bit of time to go forward. So it's good to see that we're looking at those things. And I'll move on. Mark Coletti has a question here. I heard a rumor that the Board of Regents is aiming to grow NAU to be equal to the size of U of A, which is 40,000 students. Has the city heard similar? So what's the buzz in your department there, Dan, on that rumor?
I don't have knowledge of that. I'll be frank, I don't pay much attention to the Board of Regents.
Okay. Well, and I thought, Mark, that was something they were planning, gosh, back in 2015 or so, we were trying to grow. And that's where the basis of my question came from is, and my understanding is that based on this growth projection they were going to have at NAU, that we needed more student housing. And the benefit was that if we had student housing that was developed, we could free up these other rentals that students were using to make that homes for people to live in and offer that. And so, and I don't know that we're getting anywhere with that questions, unless there's anything, Dan, that you wanted to add on that. You've answered that you don't know anything about that specifically, and I don't know that we need to belabor that question anymore unless there's anything else that you want to add.
I don't.
Okay. All right. So well, we've got 2 more minutes. Maybe if you can share your screen, Dan, and walk us through the website. Teach us how to fish. Where do we go to access this information of what the Planning and Development Department has in store, what's going on, and what the future projects are?
All right, let me pull up. Let me see if I can share all this. It's a little clunky. Let's see if I can figure this out. Okay, do you see the front page of the city website?
I sure do, yeah.
So just come to the City of Flagstaff website, flagstaff.az.gov. If you go under the Government tab, come down to Community Development. So this brings you to the front page of Community Development. And so right from the very beginning, we have links to our building permits. So this would show you, these are actually applications here with information on that. So forget what I was saying, but if you come down here, here's Planning and Development Services section, approvals, status, and construction reports. So we have links right from our front page here. This is the report that I was telling you about where it compares year to date, month by month. And so if you look at the last one of the year, for example, I already pulled this up. This is going to show you that was the June one. Here's the one for 2020. So it compares year to date, January 2020, year to date 19. It's got valuation, it's got numbers of permits, and then unit count. And then you can do it month by month. It also breaks them down here by dwelling unit type. So that's that monthly statistics and permit list. This is just a list of development approvals. So every month we, again, it's month by month. So you can click on it. It's a week by week. Looks like we've just got through May on that one. That one may be a little behind. And then here's the development status report. This is the one that is the spreadsheet. So if you go to, we need to update one. So here's the spreadsheet. Again, it's broken down by project type. Here's all the residential. Here's mixed use, institutional, industrial, commercial. You can see commercial goes on, and then subdivisions. So this is pretty much every project that's in concept or site plan review. Certainly everything that's in site plan review. So it gives you information on the acreage, how many units or the square footage if it's a commercial building, the zoning, what the zoning is, and the project description. And then here's an update of the status. So if it's in site plan, you can see here's a site plan that was approved in December of 20, the rail yard lofts. So that's that spreadsheet that was asked about.
Great. Again, and do you happen to have a map for those of us that are navigationally challenged?
I don't have a map of these. We have not mapped them. It's a lot. You can see it's
indeed.
But you can go to our GIS website and put in an address.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something we could work on. Is creating a map that would go along with these. And so those are kind of the main things that we talked about today. If you click down on some of these other sections, you're going to get more information. Some of those plans I talked about are in comprehensive planning. So that's where you can find the regional plan, you can find the HOH plan, the different neighborhood plans. Go to our regional plan page. Here's the entire regional plan, chapter by chapter, a lot of the maps that go with it.
That's great.
So we're always trying to improve our website. Sometimes it can be hard to find things that you're looking for, but really just go to the front page of community development. You should be able to get most of the things. Here's a whole section on our housing programs.
Right.
So again, I could do a whole section on housing for you. You know, we do down payment assistance for folks. We have the land trust. We work with different builders to try to get more units on the market through our incentive program. We obviously own and operate 265 units. We have close to like 700 vouchers. Again, these are the federal programs that actually, we provide direct assistance to almost 1,000 households in Flagstaff, either through our public housing locations where they live or through the Section 8 voucher program, and that's expanded into a bunch of different areas. So, you know, we do housing on one side where we actually try to provide housing through public resources. And then we have a section that tries to develop more private housing through tax credits, through incentives. And so we really kind of try to address it on all sides, both publicly provided housing and privately provided housing. So again, I'd be happy to come back anytime and talk more robustly on housing with Sarah Dar, our director.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that, Dan. That sounds like definitely something that we would be interested in. So thank you for offering that. And so stay tuned. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll put that on our calendar. And Dan, thank you so much. Is there anything? We've got a few more questions there, but what I'd like you to think about is we want a collaborative effort with our community, our city and county officials. We are part of the community. We want to be a part of the community. What can we as realtors do to help the city of Flagstaff in regards to our connections with the community? And we're the largest trade organization. We want to help. So please feel free to let us what we can do to help y'all.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I know a lot of you have participated in some of the things I've talked about. This 10-year housing plan. We've got a housing commission, so you can always volunteer to be on a commission. You can participate in these different public meetings. So just kind of keeping track of the agendas and what opportunities are there for you to participate, not only at the council level. So when a project's up for consideration, you know, providing public comment in favor or opposed to a project is a great way to get involved. The housing commission, the housing plan, this listening tour, I'll send you all the information, Melinda, for the listening tour.
Right.
I have had some realtors say, well, I don't know if I could really participate because I don't participate in terms of pulling a permit or getting a license, but we're happy to interview anybody about our process and our regulations and what we can do better. So I'll send you some of this stuff, and these are ways to get involved. So
thank you. No, we want to, so I appreciate that. We want to continue that relationship that we have with you. We greatly appreciate all of your efforts, and including today. So thank you very much for your time. Before we leave, just a couple more questions for you, Dan, if you have time. On the report, Dusty, maybe if you want to take yourself off of mute so that we can make sure that we're answering correctly. The colors mean, are you referring to the spreadsheet? I saw some purple and different colors on that report. What do those indicate on the spreadsheet? And if Dusty, if there's something different, unmute yourself and let us know.
Nope, that's the one. I just wanted to know, because like if we go into that report and we look at it, I don't know, and I couldn't find a legend that said why there was colors on that spreadsheet for the proposed building projects.
Yeah, right. How do we interpret that spreadsheet?
So I'm trying to see, I don't know the answer right off the top of my head, what the different colors are. I don't prepare this anymore.
I think if I remember correctly is, and Dusty, this is again, just going from memory from a few years ago when we had the city there referring to that spreadsheet. I think the purple ones are those that were highlighted were those that were already in the works. They were already being in process of being built.
Yeah, that could be. I just don't recall because that's been such a long time ago that
I know. And I could be wrong. So
no, you're right. So I'm looking at them. So the red ones are properties that needed to be rezoned. And so if you look at the red ones, it says zoning map amendment either required or approved. So zoning map amendment is rezoning the property. The blue ones appear to be conditional use permits. And so I'm guessing that was the key. So the blues, conditional use permit, the red zoning map amendment. This green one says annexation and map amendment. So I'm guessing the green needed annexation. So when we started this report, council wanted to know what are things that are going to be reviewed by staff? What are things that need to come to council? And so I would say these colors indicate things that have to go to a public meeting and either go to the Planning and Zoning Commission or City Council.
Okay, so I had it in the opposite then, if I'm understanding you correctly, Dan, is these are things that are not necessarily in the works yet. They're just being under review in some type of review process.
Well, everything on this spreadsheet is under review. The things in the red are things that need to have a rezoning. So in order, we'll review a site plan before you have your zoning in place. And so what happens is at the end of the site plan, then you have to go to council and get them to rezone the property and in essence approve that site plan. And so the red are ones that needed zoning approval. Some have been rezoned, some are pending. So if it's been rezoned, that means it's already gone to City Council and they rezoned it. If it says zoning amendment required, what means is when they get done with their site plan review, then it'll go to a public meeting, Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council. The blue are conditional use permits. So that's also a zoning approval, but it's at the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's different from a rezoning. It's a different level of approval, but basically you have to get that site plan approved by a public body. Does that make sense?
Dan. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So. And you said there is a legend, or how do we identify those things?
There's not a legend. There's not a legend on here. I can talk to Alex about adding a legend. There's a legend at the bottom with the initials are the project managers. So if you want to know the staff person to contact, they've got the initials by every project. And so you can contact that staff member if you have questions about the project.
Okay, fantastic. Well, there you go. You've got a resource for the resources. All right, and I think that's it. And Mark says, thank you very much for your presentation and have an excellent day. So I would have to concur with that. So Dan, is there anything else that you would like to add that we didn't discuss, or again, things that we can do to help the city?
No, I appreciate the invitation. Typically you'll have the planning director doing this. Tiffany has been out of the office enjoying. She's hiking the John Muir Trail. So we let her go for a full month. So I was the backup. Wow. So thanks for having me. And I don't do the day-to-day review the way Tiffany and Alex do. So I don't always have the same information, but I'm happy to follow up. Any other questions I haven't answered, just
know the difference.
Email me directly, call me, email me. I'll send you the PowerPoint. My contact information is in there. So thanks everybody for having us.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for your time. This has been extremely valuable. We certainly appreciate it. And don't forget, for those of you, we've got just about every Tuesday our lunch and learn series from 12 to 1:30, different things that are coming up. So look at our calendar, nazrealtor.com. You can register for those things. It's all free. We want to make sure that you guys are staying abreast of what's going on in Flagstaff and how to better your business and be the best professional that you can be. If there are recommendations or suggestions that you would like us to consider, that you want us to bring to you, please reach out to myself, Melinda Morphin, or our association, and let us know what those things are. And again, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And from Paris, I would just say bonsoir, good evening, and have a wonderful rest of your day. So we'll see you guys next week, hopefully. And I think if that's it, we'll go ahead and conclude this meeting. So again, thanks everybody for being here. Take care.